Welcome to Fireteam Chat, IGN's Destiny podcast. With me today is Sean Finnegan on my right.
Hello.
Fran Mirabella on my left.
I'm back. What's up, everybody?
And a special guest, Paola.
Hey.
Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, I'm Paola Alejandra. I host Gamer Girls Gone Wild podcast with Ivy Doom Kitty. And I don't know, I'm kind of like a weird alpha media gaming personality, but I cosplay sometimes. And I happen to do a very crazy, ambitious cosplay over San Diego Comic-Con. Almost killed me.
It was awesome.
But I'm alive.
You did a warlock, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later in the show. But first up, we want to dive right into all the big changes that happened. There was some massive weapon changes that are going to be happening in Destiny very soon.
Yeah,
Fran,
a lot.
what are you most upset about?
Upset? Why do we have to always start with upset?
What are you
because
most happy
truthfully,
about?
some of this stuff is a little upsetting, right?
Yeah.
We got to admit
Let's
that.
dive right in. They're changing and reducing the damage to the Wolfpack rounds on Gjallarhorn. That's the big topic. And honestly, for me, I'm starting to get like feedback of like, oh, this is the last straw kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to get, but let's wait until we use it for starters. And secondly, I'm interested to see that balanced out because I end up stacking my weapon set that I have to use Gjallarhorn, and I actually am kind of tired of having to use it. Mm-hmm. I love having it.
Must be rough.
So I think there's two sides. Yeah, if you don't have it, you're like, oh, don't change it. I want that
you
power.
have it.
But anyway, so to that, I'm in support of some balancing. I would love actually for another weapon to come out on. Like, man, like Truth, I've always loved the look of it. So anyway, I'm in support of there being balances and changes, but we got to try it out before we know. But anyway, that was my first reaction.
What about you, Sean? About Gjallarhorn specifically?
Gjallarhorn specifically, I think, is something that needed to be addressed. Like, in the beginning paragraph of the update, they say, like, it was always meant to be powerful, but it wasn't meant to be so powerful that there were teams out there who would only let you onto their fire team if you had Gjallarhorn. And furthermore, creating or entire strategies around having three or six people who have maxed Gjallarhorns. That was not how it was intended to be. So I did think there needed to be a change. Being one of the players who doesn't have it yet, I'm kind of a little bit bummed that I may not be able to experience the full power of Gjallarhorn before it gets nerfed. Yeah, but I think they were right to do that. It'll probably still be the most
two
powerful.
In favor of. Let's try it out.
Let's be real. It'll probably still be the most powerful PvE rocket launcher all around.
So.
Like they're nerfing the damage on how of the Wolfpack rounds. The initial damage and velocity, all of that is staying the same. So it's probably still going to be good because right now it's like light years ahead of any other rocket launcher. Now it won't just be as many light years ahead.
Exactly.
What about you, pal? How do you feel?
Well, that was just a lot of information to take in. Obviously, it's something that the community's been wanting for quite some time, and I just think it's a lot to process right now. And just the fact that, Taken King hasn't even come out yet, it's just a lot to take in. Yeah. I had to read through it a few times to be like, wait, what are they doing? Obviously there's a lot of controversy with the Thorn and the Gjallarhorn, but there's, maybe this will give an opportunity for other weapons to be highlighted in the future.
Yep.
So my big issue with Gjallarhorn and most of the weapons that we're going to talk about today being nerfed is now nothing is special. Black Hammer used to be special, and now it's not really special anymore. Gjallarhorn used to be special because it was that coveted weapon that you really wanted to have because it was great and it helped you melt through enemies, and that's a cool feeling of power that the game gave you, right? And they've taken that away, and they seem to have this philosophy of, oh, things are too good, let's make it worse, but then something else takes its place.
You really feel that way. So you wouldn't use the term overpowered instead of special? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying.
They are called exotic weapons.
That's right, and that's the only exotic that is special, to use your own words. So I'm gonna fight you on that one.
They all should be special, though. All
that's
the
right. That's what I
have
want.
A special thing.
That's true.
So there's a problem here.
To fix that, they've just made nothing special. So now none of the weapons are special. Instead, they should have made improvements on all of the weapons that weren't special.
Yeah.
Why are you calling it an exotic if Necrochasm doesn't do anything? And they did make improvements to Necrochasm, but it's still not going to be a weapon anybody uses.
So I agree. That is where I would have loved to hear them come out. Again, I love Truth. Why not take another rocket launcher and boost it as something special? But I disagree.
Dragon's Breath.
Or Dragon's Breath, yeah.
I have 3 of those, and I would love to use them because the model is so cool, the idea behind the rocket launcher is awesome. But let's be real, that thing's a POS.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Why make everything worse?
I get where you're coming at.
They
or coming
downgraded
from.
it. They said they made it worse. Objectively
It's certainly
worse.
Well, it's certainly
Wolf
a nerf.
backgrounds are not.
It
as
is
powerful.
less powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a negative thing.
I do think though that like Fran does have a point. Like it's not necessary. Like one, we don't know how much of a nerf it's going to be until we get our hands on it. So it's
Right.
it's difficult to kind of come out and say like cut and dry, this is the way it's going to be, and it's kind of a bad idea. But there weren't a lot of people out there complaining about how powerful it was. And similarly, for a lot of players who are, now hundreds of hours deep into the game, Gjallarhorn's the only reason to continue playing. Like, they're still looking for that. Mm-hmm. So to hear that the one thing you were playing for, as someone who doesn't have it, the one thing that you're still looking for is now getting a nerf, like, that's a little disheartening.
But you know what? I'm willing to bet it's still going to be the most powerful rocket launcher in the game.
Yeah, I
so
agree.
it doesn't change that. It's a matter of it being overpowered, I think, and
Why
balancing
touch it at
weapons
all?
is tricky.
Why touch it at all if it's still the most powerful weapon in the game?
Because how many times do you get asked, do you have a Gjallarhorn? And someone's like, no. And I've done it.
I'm
I'm like,
asked that.
I've
That
told
doesn't change
people
that fact.
I'm not
It
playing.
may, though,
Yeah,
help
but it
address
could
it.
lighten it up where it's like, oh, well, it's not as big of a deal. Like
Yeah.
it'll be better. I don't know. What do you think, pal?
I don't know. It's so much like to talk about. Like I said, I think the Gjallarhorn. I don't even have a Gjallarhorn, so it's
Oh, well,
like
that's why. Well,
Yeah.
Exactly, and so I still have like a few weeks or a few months to figure out if this is actually like
hate to interrupt, but we can only have people on the podcast that have Gjallarhorn. So if you could,
Well, that means I
I've been waiting. It hasn't happened yet. I'm like one of those unlucky few.
yeah.
Well, let's talk
Maybe I
about,
should just make one.
Gosh, you're
yeah,
so
just make
uncool.
one. Have it with your coffee.
craft
Just
one.
carry it with me everywhere I go.
Let's move on to a positive note. It looks like they're finally addressing the auto rifle issue. So that's actually not on the show notes, but it's in the
Yeah,
packet.
I'm
I
excited
gave
about
you.
that.
Okay.
Back patch 1.1.1, they pretty much made auto rifles completely useless.
Yeah.
So they've kind of gone back to
Pea
the
shooters
drawing
again, yeah.
board.
Yeah.
and
No matter how
they-
you cut and slice it, they nerfed them into oblivion.
Yeah, so they're tuning range and damage fall off with the weapons now, and they're going to make them more of a viable option. Their goals are to make it optimal at close to medium range. Damage stability and range are tuned such that players desire stability for reliable close quarters damage or range for better accuracy and increased damage at a distance. And elevate auto rifles so that they are more competitive, that they are a more competitive option in PvP.
Like they were.
And PvE.
Yeah.
And satisfying to use in
Yeah,
PvE.
I mean, they lean so much into the pulse rifle, shotgun thing, and then and even hand cannons, fixing some of that, and then it left auto rifles in the dust.
Yeah.
So now it sounds to me like in PvP, auto rifles were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
Suros was a thing, and now it's just not. So you want to go through the changes they're making?
Well, I just went over the positives.
Well, those were the goals, but the actual changes that they're going to make are increase the base damage. I mean, that alone for auto rifles is going to be big. Start the fall off damage closer to the player to emphasize its role as a close to medium range weapon. Again, emphasizing that distance. I mean, every gun has its role to play. You read through this, like you get a sense of how they see each gun. I would encourage you checking that out. And then, a small reduction in base stability. But again, when you're at optimal range, it says it's going to be unaffected. So they're going to boost damage as well in PvE. Well, it says 10% against AI combatants. So in PvE, they're also going to give it a little push in the right direction. So I think that's great. And they're
good.
also touching hard light as part of this.
That's
and
what
that
makes
makes me really excited because I've always loved the look and feel of that gun. I just don't use it.
Yeah.
I have a hard light that I've maxed just because I knew at some point they were going to rebuff auto rifles.
Yeah.
And I love the play style of auto rifles, and it's always been something
Yeah.
that, like in all FPSs, not just Destiny, I tend to gravitate towards those types of weapons.
That's a comfort zone for sure.
Yeah, and it'll actually be interesting to see how hard light differentiates itself as a matter, because so the difference is that while all auto rifles are getting these changes, hard light specifically will not be affected by the damage fall off. That's the one change to hard light, and I think it has to do with kind of like the weapons lore of like the high caliber / light rounds that bounce off things and stuff like that. I think that's really cool, but it may differentiate itself from the other exotic auto rifles and just legendary auto rifles that have been so prevalently used prior to this.
Do you guys think you're going to start using auto rifles?
I mean, again, like it's impossible to say with any certainty until we get our hands on them and see how much these changes are.
Impact the game.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that this is a big step in the right direction, right?
Yeah, Pow,
Literally, no one uses those guns anymore.
Yeah,
No.
Pow,
Yeah.
Pow, do you play a lot of PvP or more PvE? And what is your thought on auto
I mean,
rifles.
I do a little bit of both. It depends what kind of mood on it I'm in, and I definitely think that this is kind of it's setting it up for other people to use different kinds of weapons. As nobody used to use like the Thorn before, and then all of a sudden now it's like that gun that everyone, it's either you hate it or you love it. But
We actually have stats for that. 26% of PvP players use Thorn.
Well, that
Right.
was in the Iron Banner.
Yeah, from
During that
6:30 to
test range,
7:6.
but it would indicate that's what it looks
Yeah.
like across everything.
I mean, anyone who's spent a significant amount of time in Iron Banner or Crucible or Trials knows that most of the time you're fighting against Thorn.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But just to finish that thought, pal, I mean, were you going to say, yeah, you are excited to use auto again?
I do a little bit of both. I dabble in both. I love PvP for obvious reasons because that's kind of where my whole gaming life kind of started in multiplayer. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what I gravitate, because I got a little bit comfortable using certain weapons. So this is just going to take me outside my comfort zone for sure.
Yeah. I
That's
think
what
good.
that's what I don't like.
Yeah.
I've said it many times. I've dreaded the day that they nerf the last word. I run that gun exclusively in PvP.
Well,
and
that's a good segue into the last word,
Yeah.
which is being nerfed. Stability is going from 30 to 20, and range is going from 20 to 10. So, Sean, basically your gun's kind of useless.
yeah. Well, so they. I mean,
Destin, you're so mean.
These nerfs are bad.
the big problem with the last word, and this is something that blew my mind when I read it, was that when you compare the nerfs, so all hand cannons are getting nerfed a little bit, right? But it's particularly bad for the last word because it's getting nerfed in its most significantly strong places, in addition to the hand cannon nerfs. So it has even more reduced range and stability, and decreased efficacy in ADS. Those are the big changes to last word, which is a huge problem because last word, I think, was one of those guns that was very powerful, and its time to kill was the lowest in the game. But to get to that point, it required a huge amount of skill. Like, that gun is not easy to fire from the hip. Like, it's not easy. And it requires the player to have a situational awareness to where you know what the distances are, and you know which gun or which battles you can fight and which ones you can't. Like, there's a lot of times I'll turn the corner and I'm like, that guy's too far, I can't fight him effectively, and I'll have to flank him instead.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're increasing the accuracy and precision damage for aim assist from the
For
hip.
half fire, from the hip. Which is like, that's their goal, right? They want it to be a hip fire only weapon, and they're in order to reiterate that point and drive towards that design, they're basically nerfing all the other ways that gun was used before.
Yeah, so for that date range, Thorn was being used 26%, then Red Death, and then Last Word, which was at 11%. Last Word was 11, and Red Death was a little bit higher, we'll say like 12%.
And yet Last Word got the brunt of the nerf over Thorn, which I think is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, so what's happening with Thorn, the base damage on its Mark of Devour, damage over time, is a third of what it was in PvP and PvE. So, yeah.
Yeah, a third. Just to so if you put 2 shots in someone today, this is for the Mark
It's
of
3
Devour.
shots.
But meaning, okay, if you put 3 shots in someone today, it means you have to put 9 in them, in theory, for that same amount
of dot damage
of the damage over time. Yeah. So just for that, but that's a big change. So I think but look at the stats. I find if we can go back to stats, doesn't have to be the second Destin, but I found the gradient of how many people use Thorn versus other things interesting.
Go ahead.
All right, I will. A little quiz maybe actually. Pao, you say you do play a lot of PvP? Reasonable
here and
amount.
there. It
What have
depends.
you been killed by most?
Oh God.
Grenades.
I
What about-
think
I swear
everything.
I get
All right,
blown up all the time.
What about you guys? I mean, Thorn
Thorn.
all the
Thorn,
time.
yes,
Thorn,
for sure
Last
is up
Word,
there.
Hawkmoon.
The last word.
Yeah,
Shotgun.
those-
Hawkmoon.
Fell Winters.
Yeah, Fell
Oh,
Winters.
Fellwinter's, God. Forgot.
Yeah, but interestingly, what the stats say, and I mean, the reality is this is where you really see it. So, Thorn, at 25%, you take a step down, half the amount of players use Red Death and Last Word. And then another, it's like, let's see.
Half of that.
It's about a fifth of the amount of people that use Thorn use Hawkmoon and Vex Mythoclast. And then you're getting down into like Suros and Mina
guns that you
multi-tool.
use
And
for-
Suros
Get
used
small.
to be a top... Suros used to be
Yeah.
as high as Thorn.
Right, and I just wanted to draw that into perspective, like roughly looking at the graph, over 7 times the amount of people use Thorn than they would Suros. And likewise for like Hawkmoon, even like 5 times the amount of people use Thorn instead of Hawkmoon.
Yeah.
That tells a big story.
And Hawkmoon now, its damage is not going to stack for PvP, so it's never going to be a one-shot kill again.
Yeah.
And Sean, you made a good point about this.
Yeah, so the big bummer is that I play on Xbox, and I find it so unfortunate that I will never get to experience the power of Hawkmoon before it gets nerfed. Like, that's a huge bummer to me. It's like I didn't really look at Hawkmoon before because I don't have it on my console, right? It's not an Xbox thing, so I didn't really understand its power. But for clarity's sake, it has 2 buffs, holding aces or perks, holding aces and luck in the chamber, which basically gives you 3 of the 9 shots in the mag, 13, something like that.
Yeah, it's 13.
Yeah,
Like that.
3 of those bullets do extra damage, but there is a chance that 2 or more of those bullets could be the same bullet. So there's this phantom bullet out there that could have all 3 bonus damages on the same bullet, which would allow you to one-shot a Guardian.
Yeah, so it's
Full health
rare,
Guardian.
but it's like boom, one and done.
Yeah, and I went and watched videos of this online. There's videos of people, turning the corner, seeing a guy, and shooting him once to the head and doing 230 damage.
Yeah.
And just killing him instantly. And I'm like, man, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I will never get to do that.
Yeah.
How are you on Xbox or PlayStation?
I'm on PlayStation.
Okay, so do you
I
have
started on Xbox and then I went to PlayStation.
You made the right choice. Just kidding.
I mean,
Well,
honestly,
for this game, it
all
made
the Xbox
sense.
players mad
So
at you, Dustin.
Yeah, with all the extra exclusive content.
yeah.
That's why I started, for work purposes, honestly, so that we could capture that extra footage, and then I just kind of stuck with it. Now I
Yeah.
have a 34 on Xbox also.
I know.
So, yeah,
Destin's been toeing the line on Xbox. I'm starting to get pressure. Because
Yeah.
Jose is playing on there too, a little bit? I think so.
No, Jose.
I heard that
character.
he
has a
yeah,
character.
he
but
started.
it's not
I haven't
out
even
there.
started on there. Nah, I don't have enough time for that.
I do have a character built on my Xbox, but I need to maybe grind a little bit and kind of compare.
Took
yeah,
me
I've
a
had,
few
to,
weeks to
I've had to put
get up
Destin in
there.
my backpack and carry him through a bunch of stuff.
Whatever. It wasn't even you. It was more Stan than anybody.
Well, Stan carries all of us.
Yeah, that's true. We have a few more things to get to. We want to make sure there's time for the cosplay talk. But
Gosh.
let's talk
Can
about...
we talk about the Icebreaker for a second?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually the next one on the list.
The big problem.
Well, wait. What did you have to say about it?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's one of my sniper weapons that I use the most, and I feel like it's going to be completely useless now.
Yeah, Sean, you were saying it's like a 30-something
Yeah, there is
drop.
There is a Reddit thread out there that's calculating how much of a damage decrease percentage-wise that nerf is. So again, to be clear, the change that's happening to Icebreaker is that instead of regenerating 1 new bullet in the mag every 5 seconds, they're increasing it to every 8 seconds.
8 seconds.
And
That's a long time.
based on an empty
Yeah,
mag,
right.
that means that it's 37.5% overall damage decrease, DPS decrease, damage per second decrease, that's a huge amount. That's almost 40%. That's almost like, if you want to keep rounding up, that's having the damage
Wait,
that you
why
get
does
from
the
that
damage
perk.
change? It's just
Because you
need
have
more
less
bullets.
bullets.
Less bullets, less
Yeah.
shots,
Right.
less damage over time, or less damage.
Yeah, but
per
you still have
second.
to land each bullet.
I mean, that again.
it doesn't change the
If you can
strength
fi-
of the bullet.
If
Like-
you can fire 6 bullets versus 10, which you could usually do,
Exactly.
firing at a consistent rate with
at the same
Icebreaker.
in the same
I gotta
damage
tell
time.
you, if you're hitting in anywhere, well, okay, you
So
mean
you're
in
talking-
PvE? I was thinking PvP.
Yeah, well, you're talking about, so one, it's never wise to talk about guns in a vacuum, because you can miss shots, or you'll hit a body shot as opposed to a headshot.
Right.
But let's say you hit every one of your shots, if you're gonna have, and you're firing the same amount of bullets over the same amount of time.
I see. Yeah.
It ends up being a huge damage decrease because you're just firing less
I was
shots.
thinking in PvP, we were talking so much about that. But
Totally.
yeah, PvE, you're right,
The-
actually. That's really going to suck.
The bigger problem is that, was there anyone complaining about Icebreaker? Were
Nope.
there any encounters that were broken because Icebreaker was a
single
thing?
one.
No, not
It
at
was
all.
my faves.
So why?
Yeah.
This is one of those changes. Like I said, I agree Gjallarhorn had to be nerfed. I agree Thorn had to be nerfed. This is one that came totally out of left field. Like, Icebreaker didn't change the way people played PvE encounters. It was still a weapon that you felt powerful enough, but not overpowered, because if you die, you lost all that ammo anyway. So it seemed perfectly balanced, and here they come basically destroying the gun.
Well, how do you feel about Black Hammer then?
Oh,
Like,
that
that's-
one's even worse.
That one's
that one's
different.
even worse.
Different sniper rifle, also got a nerf. So the white nail perk would mean if you landed 3 precision shots, you would immediately have 3 more shots to keep going. So if you were really good and you keep hitting precision shots,
Infinite,
you
know.
could
Infinite ammo.
infinitely, have ammo.
So-
now it pulls from your clip.
Which is basically just using synths or
Yeah.
running around and picking up ammo off the ground. That's what
Yeah.
it's changed. That's why that perk is that changes the fundamental desire of what the gun is. Like, the reason the gun was so good was because it had a really great perk that rewarded a skill. Now there's no incentive to land the skill shots anymore. So why do I even want that gun?
Yeah.
Hey, you got 2 months to enjoy all this stuff, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So this is with the Taken King release.
Yeah,
right?
that's what they're
2.0.
saying. Yeah.
So
and that's to even say what those weapons are going to be like.
Yeah. Who
It's,
knows?
that's a great point. We don't know the new weapons that are coming down the pike.
With the new rolling system also, it's just like, is anything even really special anymore? They've just kind of normal. My whole issue is like, a lot of the weapons we're talking about today, they were cool. Like, they were cool to have. It was almost a bragging's right thing. And Bungie has it in their head that they're like, no, nothing can be better than anything else. Everything has to be equally crappy for some reason. And it's just like, why is that your mindset? Why is your mindset make everything not as valuable?
I don't think it's that generalized. They're trying to not have it be imbalanced, that there's only people using
Icebreaker's really good. How can we make it not as good
but that's
so
not
people don't like having it?
Yeah, but that's not the mentality. The mentality is there's like 250 guns in the game. Well, there's a lot more with all the lower ones. But the point is, you're only using like such a small subset. Like, most people have the same loadouts.
So to Destin's point, like, I think from a design philosophy standpoint, it would be better to buff the guns that people don't use as opposed to nerf the ones that they do use.
But as you saw with Thorn, that does happen. It's some of these changes, all of a sudden, you're like, holy crap, are you using Atheon's epilogue in PvP or whatever? I don't know that that'll be the case, but
I doubt
you know what I mean?
No one does that.
I really want it. I love that.
I had to try one time to do the Thorn bounty because that was
Such
the
a
only
cool
void
gun.
weapon I had. Oh, it's so hard.
Actually,
So
I
bad.
used to use it in PvP. It was solid. It was no Suros, but it wasn't exotic.
We have to move on from weapons, but I want to read what Sage and Deej had to say. We spent like 24 minutes on it. Anyway, Sage said, I'm going back to putting the finishing touches on the new subclasses and trying to figure out how I can make Blink less frustrating to fight against. So thank
Blink
you,
is
Sage,
the
for that.
worst
There
to
you
fight
go.
against.
Yeah.
One thing.
and
gets
then,
you.
And then Deej also said, in the next weekly update, we're serving up a preview of the new weapon foundries that you'll loot in the Taken King. We're looking down the barrel of the largest arsenal of weapons and armor that Destiny has ever seen, and that includes the original launch of the game.
Which is awesome.
So to Pal's point, yes, we're going to have a huge new cache of weapons coming.
Backing up just a tad real quick before we move on from weapons, we focused a lot on the negative. I wanted to point out that they did make a really cool change to Lord of Wolves, which is the exotic shotgun you get from doing the Elder Cipher bounty. What you do is if you get a killing blow with that weapon, it gives you and your whole team within a radius recovery +3 or whatever.
Yes.
They've now tripled that.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. Yeah, to really
That's
make it
cool.
worth using.
Yeah, because here's the thing is I use that gun all the time, and you definitely notice the recovery bonus and the fact that they're now making it
Yeah.
like three times that. That's awesome.
In the
That's
Skull
cool.
Oss fight, that's going to be awesome. I
Totally.
think,
So that was just one thing that I was like, hey, that's really cool.
You guys have any final thoughts, Fran and Pal?
Pal?
I mean, I think, everyone's just going to be on a rush to use their weapons and make as many montage videos as possible.
Oh, yeah, before everything gets...
Yeah,
Yes.
good point.
My overall thoughts are that, again, we can't definitively say what any of this stuff is good or bad until we get our hands on it, but there's a lot of stuff that comes out of totally out of left field and a lot of stuff that seems warranted. So it's a lot to talk about, a lot to wrap our heads around.
Yeah, and just to finish it right, one small change has domino effects, right? And that's why they're careful. They are changing so much that, it's really hard to say how this is going to change the game. It will change the game.
Although it is worth saying that the last time they tried to nerf something, it ended up destroying an entire weapon type.
Yeah,
so.
but then we all love shotguns all of a sudden. So look, there's going to be a lot of interesting changes.
All right, time to move on.